Hello, my friends, and welcome to another episode of the Intentional Wisdom Podcast. I'm your host, Greg Campion, and I'm delighted that you are joining me today for what is the first solo episode of Intentional Wisdom. This is a new experiment that I'm trying out, and I really want your feedback on it. So please, if you listen to this whole episode, let me know what you think about this format. Today's topic is about alcohol, and specifically my experience not drinking it for the last year. In fact, I have just recently completed 1 year without drinking, and it's been a big part of my life and sort of kind of become a big part of my identity. So I thought it'd be worth talking a little bit about what I have learned over this past year, because it's been quite a lot, and I feel like I have some interesting perspectives to share. So that's what I'm going to get into with you today. Before we get started, I wanted to give a quick shout out to the sponsor of this episode, Athletic Brewing Company. You probably already have heard me talk about Athletic Brewing Company because you know I'm a big fan. I love the quality and variety, and I love that you can have it delivered straight to your door from athleticbrewing.com. But did you know actually that Athletic is also a certified B Corp, donating up to $2 million annually to protect and restore outdoor spaces around the globe through their Two for the Trails program? Personally, I am a big fan of this company. I love that they give back to the community. I think it's a real reflection of the culture that they've built there. And supporting hiking trails and maintaining outdoor spaces is a very cool cause that I feel great about supporting when I drink Athletic. You can try Athletic Brewing non-alcoholic beers for yourself. Use code WISDOM to get 15% off your first order at athleticbrewing.com. That's code WISDOM at checkout for 15% off your first order. Near beer, exclusions and conditions apply. Athletic Brewing Company, fit for all times. All right, so let's get into this discussion about not drinking. And I figured maybe a good place to start is like why I decided to give up alcohol for a year, maybe permanently. We'll see. We'll talk about that. But so getting into why, I mean, to me, honestly, it wasn't like incredibly out of character. Like I actually have given up alcohol for a year before. Back in 2018, I didn't drink for a year. And then more recently, I haven't been drinking a ton, even in the lead up to this. Like I was playing around with different rules, like, okay, I have a 2-drink max or a 3-drink max or whatever. But there had been a handful of times when I would consider myself like overserved in the last couple of years. Like I had one night where I went to a Zac Brown concert with friends and was definitely overserved. And like the next morning, I was like, oh my God, I'm never drinking again. I'm sure we've all had that experience. But thinking back, I started drinking alcohol in my teenage years. So like kind of scary now for a parent thinking about the fact that my kids are getting close to when I actually started consuming alcohol. I think I was just thinking of it back then as like, this is a opportunity to have fun with my friends. This is what everybody is doing. But as I think back on it now, like it definitely became a pretty big part of my identity in high school and in college. And that was just what my friends and I were doing every weekend. It was binge drinking. It was getting crazy. It was vomiting all over the place from drinking too much. I mean, you may have been through a similar experience. It was messy, but it was also a lot of fun. But I think back to that now. It's only actually at like 45 years old now, where I think back and I was like, oh, I wonder if that was because I was insecure. Like, I wonder if it was because I was like skinny kid, acne, braces, like not on until junior year of high school. Like, I wonder if that sort of like insecurity played a real role in like why I wanted to be binge drinking all the time. And it's funny, it hadn't really even occurred to me until just thinking about it recently, but I think that was really a big part of it. But enough psychoanalysis on me. I'd say more recently, the probably more immediate catalyst was listening to Andrew Huberman's alcohol episode. So that probably came out about a year ago, maybe a little bit more than a year ago. And I'm not the only one who that episode had a really significant impact on. I mean, that one was just a scientific, sort of sober, no pun intended, look at what alcohol does to your body. And it was some pretty shocking stuff. If you haven't listened to that one, I would go back and listen to that, whether you're a drinker or not a drinker, because I think information is power. And just hearing like, wow, like some of the things that stood out to me were like, okay, like alcohol as a carcinogen, like looking at the numbers and how much consuming alcohol actually leads to increased cancer risk. Like that was a pretty big eye opener for me. But the other thing to me was the analysis on how drinking alcohol doesn't only affect you for like the day of or the day after, but it's in your system for a long time. And so like the one of the takeaways I came away with after listening to that episode, that was like, if you drink alcohol on a Saturday night, like Tuesday or Wednesday or Thursday, the following Tuesday, Wednesday or Thursday, like if you're feeling like stressed or anxious or moody, like there's a pretty damn good chance that alcohol and what it's done to your sleep and your digestion and everything else is still really screwing with you. So to me, that was a real eye opener. And the other thing is just, it's funny, like as I look around and if you consume my content, like my newsletter and my podcast pretty often, you probably know that I have a pretty full life. I'm very thankful. I'm married. I have 3 kids. I coach sports teams. I have a full-time job. And I also do this on the side, which is creating podcasts and newsletter. And that's a lot. That's a lot of balls in the air. And so as part of that, I have become kind of a productivity junkie. And I know this is kind of like getting a bad name these days. I think there's like a lot of pushback on like people are over optimizing their lives and stuff like that. And that's fair. But like I'm pretty damn organized in terms of planning out my year, planning things I want to accomplish. If you've seen my like year ahead, plan for 2023, you'll see like I have these identities. I want to be a great dad. I want to be a great husband. I want to be a effective executive. I want to be a profitable creator. Like I have all these identities, and then I break that down to like, okay, well, what does a great dad do? Okay, like let's break that down. Like, what does that mean? What do I actually have to do like every day and every week to actually live up to that identity? So I probably way overthink this stuff, but the whole point of bringing this up is to tell you that my life is quite scheduled because it really needs to be. And almost every minute of every day, I already know what I'm doing. I plan everything out on Sunday. So I already know what I'm going to be doing all week long. So when I'm so damn optimized and when I am so damn scheduled and when I am so focused on getting every ounce of productivity out of my hours and days, it is a complete contradiction to then go and put a bunch of poison in my body on Friday and Saturday night that will make me feel like absolute garbage and not have the energy to actually accomplish all this stuff. And okay, maybe that's like a little aggressive to say like a bunch of poison in my body, but I will point you back to the Huberman episode again, and you will quickly learn that ethanol, aka alcohol, is exactly that. It is poison, and it's just a poison that we've become. It's become socially acceptable to put into your body. And this is not a podcast about me judging or getting on a high horse or a soapbox. Let me just say right now, like I do not care if you drink. I do not care if my friends drink. I do not care if my wife drinks. They all drink, and I'm totally cool with that. To me, this is like much more a personal decision. And like I said, like I just have a lot of stuff I'm trying to accomplish in life. And some weeks I'm more successful than others, but I know with 100% certainty that if I consume alcohol, I will fall short of all of the things that I'm trying to do. So that's kind of a long-winded way of me explaining why I decided to quit drinking for the past year. But hopefully that gives you a little bit of context. All right, so let's talk about some other things that are that I've learned or that I think are important. Number one, I would say if you go down this path and you decide, okay, yeah, I want to quit alcohol, whether it's for a month or a year or some undetermined amount of time or whatever, I actually think one important thing that you need to do is communicate it to friends and family. So for me, like I said, it wasn't like completely out of character. My friends had already seen me quit alcohol for a year. They'd already sort of seen me with these pretty strict rules I put on myself in terms of like maximum number of drinks I would allow myself. So it wasn't out of character at all for me to be like, by the way, I've like completely given up alcohol now. But it is something that I've encountered over time and it being difficult. So I think like what happens is if your friends or family or whoever are used to being in an environment with you where you're all drinking together, there's going to be some pushback if you all of a sudden tell them that you're not drinking anymore. And there's going to be some peer pressure. And look, I'm in like mid 40s, like even mid 40s. Like you would think this would be something that would be like, you're 22, your friends will give you a really hard time. I'm 45 and my friends I get some pushback. I'll say that. And I've been in situations where, a room full of people overserved being like, come on, Greg, take a shot, this and that. And like, again, this is like at 45 years old. And, but what I found is that it gets much, much easier when you communicate it and then you keep showing up and people keep seeing that, okay, well, like maybe this is actually serious, that this guy's actually not drinking anymore. And, one thing I've talked about in other places is that one thing I found is that it gets a lot easier over time, just in terms of like those social expectations. And funny enough, like I've had the really fortunate experience where once my friends and family sort of realized that, okay, he's actually serious, he's actually not drinking anymore, then like a switch flicks and like all of a sudden they're not making it harder for you to do that. They're making it easier for you to do that. And what I mean by that is like, at one point I just started showing up to parties with friends, even at my mom's house. And all of a sudden there were like non-alcoholic beers like stocked for me. And they're like, hey, we got these for you. Like we knew you were coming. We got these for you. I was like, oh my God, that is like incredibly kind and thoughtful of you. I was used to, and this has become like a habit of mine. I always show up like with this little like cooler. I've even brought it to restaurants that I have like non-alcoholic beers that I just carry around myself, and we can talk about that. But anyways, the point I'm trying to make here is communicate your decision to friends and family. Stay consistent with that. If you're really serious about it, don't waver, and you will get over this hump where they say it finally clicks for them. And then, like, believe it or not, they actually start making it easier for you, which is really cool. Let me take a quick sidebar here and just talk a little bit about addiction for a second, because the danger of me putting out content about not drinking alcohol is that I can quickly waver, I guess, into the territory of, people who have struggled with addiction over time. Now, I will say I consider myself fortunate in that I don't feel that I've ever been like really addicted to alcohol, certainly not like in my adult life. I would say if you go back and looked at my friends and I in college and, drinking probably like 5-6 nights a week, like we could have probably had a pretty good conversation about addiction back then. But anyways, I take this very seriously, and it's not lost on me at all that alcohol is something that can completely ruin people's lives and has done. And, I look back even in my own family history, and there's been a lot of alcoholism. And look, it's a serious, serious thing. I've had some conversations about this on my podcast in the past. If you check out my episode that I did with Louis Rivolo, I mean, he almost died from his addiction to alcohol. He's had a pretty unbelievable comeback story and some of the stuff he's accomplishing today. But my point here is that this discussion today is more geared toward people who are trying to either cut back alcohol or cut out alcohol, but it's more based on because they want to improve their overall health or their overall productivity, or just their ability to have more success in basically every part of their lives. And it's not about addiction. And that's particularly important when I talk about things like non-alcoholic beverages, which I'm a big fan of, like the non-alcoholic brews like Athletic. So I just want to make that distinction because I have a lot of respect for everybody going through that really hard path of addiction. I've not personally experienced that, but I have a lot of empathy for those people who have. And one thing I would point you to, if that's you or somebody in your life, is about a year ago, I can try to find the link and link it in the show notes, but about a year ago, Rich Roll and Tim Ferriss did a great podcast episode about addiction. And Rich Roll, if you don't know him, he's like an ultra marathoner. He's a super successful podcaster, like somebody who I really admire. He was an alcoholic, or I guess I think the way they term it is that's never past tense. So I guess he is an alcoholic, but he's been sober for something like 20 years. And he just talks about his story and going through AA, and it's just really, really powerful stuff. So if that is something of interest, I would highly recommend checking that out. But again, I'm sorry, I'm being a little long-winded in everything I'm saying here. Hey, this is a new format, this new solo episode, so give me a break here a little bit. But yeah, let me just say, if you're struggling with addiction, honestly, the discussion I'm having here today is probably not exactly targeted toward you. Okay, so as I think about this path to sobriety, so to speak, one of the things I have been trying to figure out over the past year is, how do I do this without making my life terribly boring? And how do I do this without like alienating friends or family or trying to make them feel bad because they're drinking and I'm not drinking? And how do I maintain and even grow my relationships without alcohol? And let me just say this, like, I think there are positives to drinking alcohol. Like, there's a reason that alcohol has become a social norm for humans over probably thousands of years. And that's because, like, I think there are some benefits of, like, taking the edge off and loosening people up and helping with, conversation and stuff like that. So I fully admit that. And I also want to acknowledge that I'm coming at this today as like the 45-year-old version of myself. If I was the 25-year-old version of myself, I don't know that, I don't know. I have a lot of respect for younger people who decide not to drink alcohol. So I just had Brooke LeBlanc on my podcast. She's like mid-20s, living in New York City, and she's, living this great lifestyle, but doing it completely sober. That's super interesting to me, and I have a lot of respect for that. Like, I did the total opposite. I was living in New York City at that time in my life. And I think back I met my wife when I was mid-20s in New York City. And I mean, I think back and I'm like, yeah, I probably had 5 drinks in me when I met my wife. And that's probably a decent part of the reason I had courage to be super outgoing and all that, and ultimately woo her, so to speak. So I don't want to completely poo-poo alcohol and be like, alcohol is terrible, there's no benefits. I get it. It can be fun to drink and there's benefits. For me, honestly, it almost just comes down to a math equation these days where the costs far outweigh the benefits. But if I was 25, I don't know, that calculus might be different. So I just want to be super honest about that. So anyways, one of the ways that I've found to, keep enjoying social situations and, being able to not totally give up on being part of the party and stuff like that is non-alcoholic beers. So when I quit alcohol for a year back in 2018, honestly, it was rough. It was a long, boring year. And I was in so many social situations where I was just like, this sucks. Like everybody's getting rowdy and having fun. I remember I was like at this like dueling pianos event, which is like, have you ever been to one of those? They're really fun. Everybody's like calling out songs and, it's like a big sing along. And I was at that and I was like, oh my God, this should be fun, but it's not fun. So that was 2018. This year, it's been a pretty different experience for me. So I discovered Athletic Brewing beers, and feel free to take anything I say here with a grain of salt because I am being compensated by them for some of the episodes that they're sponsoring here of my podcast. But I found Athletic Brewing. I started drinking their beers, and I was like, whoa, this is like good beer. And there, for me, I was like, there's a massive placebo effect going on here. Now, the Athletic beers are not 0% alcohol. There's like a trace amount of alcohol in them. But I mean, realistically, I think you'd have to like drink like a case of them to approach anything near a hangover. But anyways, so I started drinking these at parties and I was like, wow, like I feel like I am part of the party. For some reason, I feel completely different than I would if I was sitting here drinking a club soda. Like I feel like I'm drinking a beer, I'm hanging out, and I don't feel like much is lost. Now, there is a little bit of something lost because like, as you know, you're at a party and people are drinking and, the hours start to go by and all of a sudden like, people are saying, people are getting drunk basically, is what's happening. And so you're sitting there drinking these non-alcoholic beers. Obviously you're not going to get drunk. And so realistically for me, like what it's meant is having one of these non-alcoholic beers in my hand, I feel like I'm part of the action. There is a placebo effect. So I think there is almost like an effect that I feel like a little looser than I would otherwise. However, there is like a 0% probability I'm going to be like, yeah, let's do this till 2 a.m., I mean, I'm not going to do that anyways because I'm kind of stopped doing that many, many years ago because I'm a morning person anyways, and I just don't like to be out late. But anyways, my point is that the growth of the non-alcoholic beverage space has been massive recently. So Athletic is the one that I drink most often, but there's all kinds of non-alcoholic beers from Guinness Zero to Heineken Zero to, there are all these different craft brewers now coming out with non-alcoholic beers. So back in 2018, like the choice was like O'Doul's, which is like a hard no, or Club Soda or LaCroix or something like that. It was just super boring. And so now that space has totally opened up and it's become much more socially acceptable. So here's one interesting thing that I've noticed. So I mentioned to you that one of the kind of unexpected impacts of not drinking was friends of mine starting to stock non-alcoholic beers in anticipation that I would be like coming over to their party. Another unanticipated impact has been friends and family starting to actually drink these things alongside me. Now, in almost all cases, they are not people who are, giving up alcohol, but much more the case is that they are either wanting to cut back on alcohol or probably more regularly is like they just want to not have a massive hangover the next day. And so or it's like a Sunday afternoon and they have to work the next day or something like that. So I've seen this interesting behavior among my friends in that they'll do something called zebra striping, which is what Bill Schufelt, the CEO of Athletic, he talked to me about this on my podcast. Yeah, I'm dropping names here. But he explained the concept, which is like zebra striping is like you drink one alcoholic beer, then one non-alcoholic beer, then one alcoholic beer, then one non-alcoholic beer, right? So you're just like mixing them in. I've seen my friends start to have that behavior, and it's become interesting because it was, I think traditionally if anybody had a non-alcoholic beer in their hand, be like, dude, like what's going on? Do you have a problem or something? And now it's become so ubiquitous that it's just normal. And so that's an interesting behavior that I've started to see. And by the way, like I said, like the non-alcoholic beers are actually like legit good these days. So that's been a big part of that. as well. The other thing I would say is that there's other types of non-alcoholic beverages that are coming out onto the market. So I've had this one called Recess, which I think is pretty good. They have like a non-alcoholic margarita. They have like a non-alcoholic, I think it's Paloma, non-alcoholic ginger mule. A bunch of these drinks that are like traditional alcoholic cocktails. They have these like mocktails out. I haven't gone super far down that road, but I've kind of messed around with them a little bit. I kind of like that non-alcoholic margarita. And if you have like a Mexican night or something like that, I think that can be like a pretty decent option. So to me, like I always like to look at the label on these things because I actually don't want to put a bunch of sugar in my body either. I think the Recess ones are pretty good. So check that out if you're interested. I have not found a great non-alcoholic wine yet. And so that's something I'm in the market for currently. I have admittedly not really tried that hard to find one, but I do like a glass of red wine, and it has been, well, at least a year since I've had one. So I'm interested in that. So if you're listening to this and you are a connoisseur of non-alcoholic wines and you have one that you recommend in particular, let me know. And I'd love to try it out. And if it's good, I'll mention it in my newsletter or maybe an upcoming podcast. So, but last thing I'll say on that is that honestly, it's kind of fun to become like a little bit of a connoisseur of these non-alcoholic beverages. Like I've been getting deliveries regularly from Athletic Brewing Company, trying a bunch of their different brews. They're always pumping out different kinds of brews. So they have all of this like seasonal stuff, and I follow them on social media, and they're like doing some pretty cool stuff. They're like showing you, okay, we're in the lab now, and we're working with this like citrus, blah, blah, blah. We're going to do this one. We're going to do this IPA. And you're like, oh, wow, sweet. I want to try that. So it's cool stuff. And I've enjoyed like becoming a bit of a connoisseur of non-alcoholic beverages. So anyways, if that's your thing, yeah, check it out and let me know what you like. Okay, I want to talk a little bit about maybe some of the benefits of not drinking. I've talked to you a little bit about, some of the stuff that scared me, quite honestly, when I was listening to that Huberman episode, but maybe just thinking about some of the benefits. I would definitely say the sleep is a massive one. And so if you consume my content regularly, you'll know that I'm a big like device guy. So I got like the Apple Watch going, I got the Whoop going, I sleep on the 8 Sleep, I'm all deviced out. I'm probably overkill on this stuff. But one thing you learn pretty quickly if you have any of these devices and you consume alcohol is that there is nothing on the planet that will crush your recovery and all your health scores and everything on these devices like alcohol. I mean, I mentioned that night I went to that Zach Brown concert, and I woke up the next morning and I looked at my Whoop and it was on like 1%, red recovery, 1% recovery. It was just like, you're looking at all my metrics. I was like, holy, like I'm like clinically dead. I'm like almost dead. Like this is what this thing is telling me. And by the way, like I kind of alluded to earlier, like that did not bounce back right away. I think I was like a week. It was like a week before my metrics got back to normal. So better sleep is a big impact of not consuming alcohol. And, if you are into the world of health and wellness at all, you will be well aware that sleep is like one of the most important parts of maintaining, strong physical and mental health. I mean, it is just the absolute foundation and critical building block of health. So to me, sleep is a big, big impact, and I sleep much better. And, part of that is A, no alcohol in your system. B, if you're not drinking alcohol, you're probably going to bed earlier, honestly. And C, you're also very unlikely to be making like really crappy nutritional choices, right? So like, if you're not drinking alcohol, like what are the chances that at 1 a.m. you're pounding 3 slices of pizza? Like probably pretty low. You've probably been sleeping for multiple hours at that point. So these things all add up. And to me, that's been one of the big impacts. I mean, the other impact I would say is that I'm pretty focused on, trying to improve my health in different ways. And, one thing I've noticed this year is that my workouts have just been much more consistent and more rigorous as well. And so why is that? Well, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure it out, but like if you're not drinking, you're going to feel better the next day. You're going to feel better all week. You're going to have more energy, and you're going to be able to do harder and harder workouts and more workouts. And so like one thing I noticed was I mentioned on Sundays, I will plan out my whole week. And so that includes my workouts. So on every Sunday I plan out, okay, this is the workouts I'm doing every single day. And so when I have that visibility that on weekend mornings, I'm going to feel great. Like I already know I'm going to feel great on a weekend morning. I already know I'm going to be able to get up at 6:30 a.m. or whatever it is. And so I can plan ahead and be like, okay, I got a tough work week this week, but like weekend's coming up, and okay, like I'm going to like crush 2 like really hard workouts. Like so I might go for a really long run, or I may do like a really intense strength session, hour and a half, whatever. I can plan that into my schedule. And that's how you make gains in your fitness. So this year has been crazy. Like I got into this zone 2 training, and I mean, honestly, I probably ran like 10 miles all of last year. And I've run actually, I don't even know what the number is, but it's a couple hundred miles this year. Like I've run more this year than I've probably run since like I did high school cross country. So it's not a coincidence, I don't think. And so one thing that is notable is I mentioned I love tracking all these health metrics, and I'm kind of addicted to it, but I think it's a pretty good thing to be addicted to, honestly. But like, so what I'm looking at is like my resting heartbeat or my VO2 max. So let's take like resting heartbeat, for instance. So as I've run so much this year, and I've just gotten so much of this zone 2 training in. If you don't know what that is, I may actually do another one of these solo podcasts about zone 2 training, but I wrote like a whole primer. So go check out my newsletter at gregcampion.substack.com, where I did like a whole primer on what zone 2 training is. But anyways, I've done a bunch of that this year. And what's been really cool to see is like my resting heartbeat keeps going down, down, down. I mean, it's not like big dramatic moves, but it is like every month my resting heartbeat is going down. And I'm like, damn, that is freaking cool to see at 45 years old. I'm psyched about that. So talk about benefits of not drinking. It's all correlated, right? It's like habits are like dominoes, and we cut the alcohol out, boom, it like knocks over a positive domino. Yes, I'm going for that 60 or 90 minute run. But I'm like, ask me if I was going to do a 60 or 90 minute run like a year ago, I'd be like, I don't even know if I can run a mile. So those are a few of the benefits that I would point out. The downsides I kind of mentioned already a little bit. It's like, what I would say is in the social situations, or in any situation really, you don't get the highs from drinking, but you don't get the lows either, right? And so to me, a lot of this comes down to, I hear a lot of people say, oh, you're, YOLO, or, aren't you kind of like wasting your life? Aren't you kind of giving up the stuff that's enjoyable in life? And listen, I get it. Like, I totally get it. Like, I was a drinker for, I don't know, like 30 years or something like that. Like, I understand like what's fun about drinking. I totally get it. But like I said, to me, it's like a math equation these days. And I'm like, it's not worth it to me to be like buzzed or drunk and I have all these downstream negative impacts. And so like, think about like, are you not enjoying your life to the fullest? Well, that's honestly comes down to like how you define what makes you happy or what you enjoy out of life. Let me give you an example. I was at a friend's party last weekend. Fun time. Everybody's drinking. I was drinking non-alcoholic beers as usual, whatever. The party probably went on till like 2 a.m. I was out of there at 10 o'clock p.m. because like I said, like if you're not drinking alcohol, there's kind of no point of being around past like 10 p.m. So anyways, I'm out of there at 10 p.m., get home, get a really great sleep. Like wake up next day, all my devices are like flashing green, like you're good, man. So I'm like, awesome. I'm going to go for a hard run. I got up like 6:30 a.m., got myself to this Greenway bike path down the street, and I busted at like 5-6 miles. I just busted it. And I was like, got home from that at like 8 a.m. and felt terrific, and like had breakfast with my kids, had a shower, and then and I was like, looked at the day ahead of me, and I was like, oh my God, I have so much to do, but I feel awesome. And I'm just going to like crank stuff out. And to me, it's like, okay, what's the enjoyment of life here? Is the enjoyment of life staying till 2 a.m. and having some BS conversations and then feeling like shit the next day? Or is the enjoyment of life like getting up and freaking kicking life's ass the next day? Like, to me, the enjoyment of life is the latter. But now we're getting close to me getting up on soapbox territory, which I don't want to do, because I feel like this not drinking thing can be like a cult, and like there's nothing I like less than somebody showing up to my door trying to convince me to like join a religion or something like that. So I don't want to be that way about not drinking alcohol, but I just want to make that point. Like, are you really not enjoying life if you're not drinking alcohol? That's, I guess, in the eye of the beholder. So yeah, those are some of the things I've learned. I think I've talked for quite a while now, so I think I'm going to probably leave it there. Listen, it's been an interesting year for me. Have I been bored sometimes at parties and stuff, not drinking? Sure. There's definitely been times when I've been like, this kind of sucks. And so that's the downside. It's not like there's zero downsides of not drinking alcohol. That's the downside. You find yourself at parties, everybody's getting hyped up, you're not, and you're like, what time can I leave? That's the downside. The upside is basically everything else. The upside is like, you're probably going to lose weight. You're probably going to get healthier. You're probably going to have a bunch of fitness gains. You're probably, you're probably just going to feel better. And so to me, that's what it's all about. And I mentioned like, I'm probably overboard with like over optimizing different parts of my life and all that kind of stuff. But that's because it's all important stuff to me. Like, I really want to succeed in being a dad, being a husband, being a creator, doing the kind of stuff I'm doing right now. I want to succeed at that kind of stuff. And there's 0.000% chance I have the energy to do that stuff up to my potential if I'm regularly consuming alcohol. So last thing, maybe this blows up everything else I've said so far in this podcast, but am I done drinking alcohol forever? I don't know that I can say that, honestly. What I've done this time differently than I did in 2018 is 2018, I was like, okay, I got this streak. I got to get it to 365 days. And then on like day 366, I was like drinking a Guinness by the way, I was like drunk after like 2 beers. So that was kind of interesting. But this time I viewed it much less of a streak, so to speak. And it's just been more of a lifestyle change. There are parts of me sometimes where like, I'd like a glass of red wine, or I'd like a Guinness, or I see myself like, when would I have an alcoholic beverage? Like, if I went to Napa Valley with my wife, would I drink? I don't know. If I went to Ireland, would I drink some Guinness? I don't know, is the answer today. So here I am at 45 years old, having just completed a year without drinking. But even after doing that, I'm not ready to say that I'm like done drinking. But I will say that probably the longer it's gone on, the more it's become part of my identity. And once a habit becomes part of your identity, it becomes pretty deeply ingrained. And it's interesting because there is a part of that that's intrinsic, but there's also a part of that that like is extrinsic. Like, there's a part of that like, hey, I just had this whole conversation with you about not drinking. There's probably some expectation now in the world that Greg Campion is not going to drink. So that's probably a factor as well. So I don't know is the answer, but right now I'm feeling pretty good about this choice, and it's worked out pretty well for me. So hopefully I haven't bored you too much. Hopefully this has been maybe a little bit informative or interesting to you to hear about my experience. If you're doing something similar, I'd love to hear about it. So, give me a comment on this podcast or reply to my newsletter. I always answer all the replies I get on my newsletter, or hit me on Twitter. I'm at Gregory Campion on Twitter, and I'm always there, pretty active there as well. So thank you for listening. And maybe just a final call out for the newsletter. If you don't subscribe already, go to gregcampion.substack.com. I send out a newsletter every other week, and I always recap my podcast episodes, and I tell you all the content that I'm consuming. So I like to think I add some value there every other week. So check that out if you're interested. Otherwise, thank you for indulging me in this first solo episode ever of Intentional Wisdom. I'm excited to see if people are going to like this or if it's going to be a complete flop. I have no idea, but let me know one way or the other. All right, appreciate you checking this out, and I will see you next time.